Today by Prime Minister Modi as he concluded the debate on the motion of thanks to the President's address. Without sounding polarizing or acerbic or vitriolic, in his 1 hour and 30-minute speech, he hit two birds with one stone. He attacked Arvind Kejriwal without naming him, saying that while Modi is building houses for the poor, some netas were busy building sheesh mahals for themselves, coming as it does 24 hours before the Delhi elections. He also attacked Rahul Gandhi, saying that some people use poverty as a photo opportunity, and that only one family has 3 MPs in parliament at the same time. That once again reiterates his Parivarwad attack. He also attacked Rahul Gandhi and other opposition leaders for speaking what he called the language of the urban Naxals. But the bigger question is this. Let's make no mistake about the timing of the attack and also the fact that he attacked both Kejriwal and Rahul Gandhi just 24 hours before the Delhi election. Will it, though, move the needle when Delhiites go to the hustings?
5 दशक तक गरीबी हटाओ के नारे सुने हो और अब 25 करोड़ गरीब गरीबी को परास्त करके बाहर निकले। जो लोग गरीबों की झोंपड़ियों में फोटो सेशन कराकर अपना मनोरंजन करते रहते हैं, उन्हें संसद में गरीबों की बात बोरिंग ही लगेगी। कि दिल्ली से 1 रुपया निकलता है तो गांव में 15 पैसा पहुंचता है। अब उस समय तो पंचायत से लेकर पार्लियामेंट तक एक ही पार्टी का राज था। पंचायत से पार्लियामेंट तक एक ही पार्टी का राज था और उस समय उन्होंने सार्वजनिक रूप से कहा था कि 1 रुपया निकलता है 15 पैसा पहुंचता है। बहुत गजब की हाथ सफाई थी। कुछ नेताओं का फोकस घरों में जकूजी पर, स्टाइलिश शावर्स पर, लेकिन हमारा फोकस तो हर घर जल पहुंचाने पर है। आदरणीय सभापति जी, हमने ये जो अलग अलग कदम उठाए उससे लाखों करोड़ रुपए की बचत हुई, लेकिन उन पैसों का उपयोग हमने शीश महल बनाने के लिए नहीं किया। इसका उपयोग हमने देश बनाने के लिए किया है।
All right, so has the Prime Minister blunted the opposition's criticism, particularly what Rahul Gandhi had said that Jaishankar had gone to sneak out an invite for the swearing in, the fact that he said that the Prime Minister does not understand AI. He also said that the army chief was contradicting this whole business about Chinese incursions. Has the Prime Minister blunted the opposition's criticism, and particularly what the leader of the opposition said in his speech yesterday? RP Singh is national spokesperson of the BJP. Salman Soz, spokesperson of the Congress Party. Smita Prakash, editor of ANI, is also joining us. So Salman, let me start with you first. The Prime Minister said those who did photo ops with the poor find pro-poor policies boring. There was a Mr. Clean of the Congress Party who said famously, out of 1 rupee, only 15 paise reaches the common man, but he did nothing. Some talk like urban Naxals threaten to wage war against the state. He also asked how many SC/ST families have had 3 members of parliament at the same time. There's only one family which has had 3 members in parliament at the same time. Again, sort of pricking this whole thing that, you know, when you talk about social justice and caste census, why are privileges only meant for one family? That's his contention. Please respond.
Well, I think what the Prime Minister would really want us to believe is that he's the one who's done everything for the masses of this country. Meanwhile, what we've seen, including from this most recent budget, is that scheme after scheme that was meant for the poor and the lower income families of India, they have been cut. That is the reality of this Prime Minister. This is the same Prime Minister who said today that, unlike others, I guess he meant us, he does not believe in sloganeering. He believes in work. Meanwhile, his work was such that he promised in 2016 that India would be a manufacturing global hub. We would reach 25% of GDP. Today, we are at 13% of GDP, the lowest since 1960. He's talked about maybe the Gandhi family today, but millions upon millions of families in India are suffering. He will talk about the tax cut that he gave, in this budget, which is going to affect a very small fraction of Indians. Meanwhile, he's going to charge GST from 65% of the GST will come from 50% of the bottom 50% of the population. He will not talk about that. He should also tell us why is it. I mean, if he's really talking about work, that he's been able to put a lot of work behind the Indian economy. He should then tell us why is it that income taxes, which he said he's given income tax, why is it that next year, for the one that they've just budgeted for, 28% of all revenues will come from income taxes? Meanwhile, corporation taxes are at about 20.5% of overall revenues.
Okay.
Why is that? What is happening to this economy? What is happening to this country? The Prime Minister will not talk about that. He'll distract from all that because that is his record. His record is one of increasing inequality in India, and that is going to come and bite us.
RP saying increasing inequality, share of manufacturing is down. What's the point of giving tax relief to middle classes after 10 years? In any case, they're all paying through GST, through indirect taxes. These are the attacks from the Congress party.
Well, Zakka, what was the relief when the Prime Minister came? To just 2 lakh rupees. Today is 12 lakh rupees, 12 lakh 75,000 to be precise. But, I mean, we are not here to satisfy the opposition. We are here to ensure that the poor man or the middle class are taken care. And 25 crore people, the poor have been brought up from the poverty line and from the poverty segment. And they are part of the middle class now. But Prime Minister also referred to how Constitution was being belittled by the Congress party in different times. So, whether it was through 370-35, it was because of 370-35A, how Jammu Kashmir and Ladakh was left out of the mainframe of the country because of 370-35A. So, not only that, and Congress is still batting for 375-35A. Even today, when they are still batting for it, the senior Source Saab is still batting for 375-35A.
No, but so, RP Singh Saab, please respond. The 2 or 3 things in Rahul Gandhi's speech which the BJP took grave exception to yesterday was, one, he said Jaishankar went to Washington to get an invitation for Trump's inauguration. He said 70 lakh new voters were added between Lok Sabha and Vidhan Sabha in Maharashtra. Where are the answers to all those questions?
Well, we all know that Jaishankar Saab never went for any invitation. He, as per the protocol, only the foreign ministers are called for the swearing in. It's never the head of the state which are called for the swearing in. But that's the basic knowledge of the foreign affairs of the Mr. Rahul Gandhi. No one can help. And as for the 70 lakh voters, the election commission has categorically answered each and every in detail that how 40 lakh voters added, not 70 lakh. This figure is wrong again. 40 lakh voters added because every quarter now the new voters are added. I mean, it's not like once in a year. Every quarter the new voters are added. And let me add to that, because a Ladki Behan, a lot of people who did join the voter list, they went out, and the women especially went out, and because of out of that 40 lakh, please check, the majority is the women voter because they thought they will get the advantage of Ladki Behan Yojanas.
Okay. So let me ask Smita Prakash this. He also, without naming him, talked about some leaders focus on jacuzzis and stylish showers while we bring Har Ghar Jal. He also said that while we are building houses for the poor, some people are building sheesh mahal. Do you think this will have resonance in the Delhi election? I mean, coming as it does 24 hours before Delhi goes to polls, Smita?
Well, yeah, that we'll get to know when tomorrow whether the middle class comes out to vote in large numbers or not, and whether they have been affected by this or not. You began by saying that the Prime Minister's speech was not acerbic or vitriolic, but as you yourself pointed out the instances, there were some sarcastic jabs, which included the jacuzzi part. I mean, many would say that it was not without provocation, because because Rahul Gandhi's speech was pretty provocative. And today's speech of the Prime Minister was 95-minute long, ostensibly, and it was about the President's address. But, in actuality, there were many more targets that the Prime Minister was hitting at. Of course, he highlighted the NDA government's vision to make India Viksit Bharat. A large chunk of that 95 minutes was about that. But then, like he said, that there was nothing comical or humorous in setting up units in Bihar, which is that Makhana unit that he talked about. It did seem initially, the memes and stuff that came out about it, that it would be finding it funny. But for Bihar, it matters a lot, and it matters tremendously to others also who believe in MSMEs. The other thing that he pointed out was, when he talked about, do you remember the time when there was no urea? And the camera cut to people in the audience, and I could see for myself that there were people nodding, from both sides of the aisle. Sons and daughters of farmers who remember the era when one had to stand waiting for urea and fertilizer. So, these are things which resonate with people who come, even with Delhi voters, the Purmachalis, who are sons and daughters of farmers, who became landless laborers in farm hands, and when that didn't work, they have come to the cities as laborers in the cities who are voting in Delhi. So, Delhi has a strange population mix today of people from different parts of the country. And so the voters of 10 years back are not the voters of today. So, these are things of the Prime Minister's speech which has resonated probably. How it has resonated and whether they will vote for the BJP because of this, anybody's guess.
So Salman, that's the moot point. Anybody who thinks that this will not have an impact on the Delhi elections or will not have resonance on the Delhi elections may be mistaken, because at the end of the day, even the announcement for increasing income tax slabs to 12 lakhs, Delhi is one of the highly urbanized parts of this country. More than 60% are urban middle class, what you would characterize as urban middle class. The point is that, are you saying that this will not have an impact on any of these voters? And most importantly, coming at a time when many are saying Congress is not even taking this contest seriously.
Zakka, I think I'll leave it to you and the audience to decide if some of the things that the Prime Minister says should be taken seriously. Smita Prakash just talked about the Makhana scheme that for Bihar, 100 crore rupees. And by the way, in the same budget, in the same list of schemes, you will see manufacturing, Make in India, pushing it forward. That they've allocated 100 crores to. I mean, there's a level of unseriousness in this government that I'm appalled by. Of course, the Prime Minister talked about building houses, and Smita Prakash talked about that. By the way, let's look at the budget. The budget that the government put out says that Pradhan Mantri Awas Yojana for Gramin, rural, they had to spend 54,500 crores, and they spent 34,426 crores. And the urban part, again, they had a massive underspend on the Awas Yojana for the urban side. So the Prime Minister, the Finance Minister, they talk a big game, but they have totally failed to deliver. And the people of the country are realizing that talking a big game is one thing, delivering is quite another. And one more thing, which I think, just because you said, you basically said the tax cut was for middle classes, Zakka, I think that we have to be careful about how we frame this. Somebody earning 1 lakh rupees a month in India is not middle class. That is 6 times the per capita income of this country. Meanwhile, in the United States, people earning 1/6 of the per capita income pay taxes. income taxes. I'm not saying that we should not give relief because people deserve relief. People have been hammered by GST, by inflation, by so much.
Okay.
But we should be careful about how we frame this.
So, RP saying, people earning more than 1 lakh are not necessarily middle class. Salman Soz says they're actually, the rich class. And by giving the rich class a tax cut, how are you benefiting the poor? That's the question that he's asking.
Well, already a lot of provisions have been made for poor. When Swachh Bharat happens and the toilets are being made there for the poor, I'm sorry, Salman Sood was talking about housing. More than 4 crore people, especially 78% women, has got houses, and their target is another 3 crore women. All these houses were not built in the last 60 years. But other than all this, there's another point which Prime Minister referred to, which is very important. That scheduled tribe, because the Congress keeps picking on caste census and all. So scheduled tribe seats medical college, seats of students MBBS rose from 7,700 to 17,000. This is a big number. So if that is happening, that's helping the poor and the middle class both. And also especially the backward class. The scheduled tribe MBBS seat rose from 3,000 to 9,000 seats. OBC MBBS seats rose from 14,000 to 25,000 seats. So and the number of colleges which has been added, medical colleges which have been added, is almost double the figure which has been in the last 60 years, 387 to 780 colleges, medical colleges.
Okay.
So, they only see with this one dimension. When Startup India is being funded, or Mudra Yojana is being funded, more than 50 crore people have been funded, taken care under the Mudra Yojana scheme. So, obviously, they are from the poor class and middle class both. And they are also the growth engine for the society.
Okay, but that still doesn't explain, and Smita Prakash, I'll give you the final word. While yes, across the country, Mr. Modi has become a welfareist. He's done more for the poor, as he says, much more than what the Congress over the last 5 decades has done. But what about in Delhi? Why is the party of the poor the Aam Aadmi Party? So much so people are saying it's the poor who will decide in Delhi, who will win Delhi, and not so much the people earning more than 1 lakh who've got a tax relief now in the budget.
Yes. So what has happened is that, look, the middle class in this city used to vote for the BJP. That stopped over 2 decades ago. It stopped probably 3 decades ago. It stopped. It stopped with Sushma Swaraj. That was the last time. Look, people used to say, "Hum dukane band karke jaake vote dete the." That's a big say. To say that, the shopkeepers will shut their shops to go and cast a vote. Now that shifted en masse to Sheila Dikshit. It shifted then from Sheila Dikshit to Aam Aadmi Party. This budget was probably not aimed just for Delhi elections, for the entire country. But yeah, that middle class is something that the BJP is trying to woo back. As far as the Juggi Jhopdi colonies are concerned, that was the strength of the Aam Aadmi Party. That is something which was the strength of the Congress, which the Congress just let go and gave it to the Aam Aadmi Party. This time they are clawing back. The Congress party, which was not fighting at all, which you mentioned to Mr. Soos, quite rightly so. They did not fight till the last slog overs. Then they come in, like I said, in another show, that like Hardik Pandya, they come in the slog overs to bat. And it seemed a little too late. But the explanation which the Congress gives is that in Delhi, it's always the last 6 days that matter. So if that Juggi Jhopdi vote, which was the Aam Aadmi Party's vote, the Aam Aadmi Party sensed it, mind you, Zakka. That is why they are a little nervous. They're not so nervous about the BJP, which they know like a juggernaut, it works like smooth machinery. It is a little nervous about the Congress, which is coming back to claw that Juggi Jhopdi colony vote, which they want back. The Muslim vote and the Dalit vote, which they want to claw back from the Aam Aadmi Party, realizing that it is the space that they vacated, which the Aam Aadmi Party occupied.
Salman Soos, why are you waking up to this reality in the last week of the Delhi election?
Because they're not
quite frankly, Zakka, I'm not involved with the Delhi election, but our party has its own strategy. It's always, it's what may seem like a certain situation to you in the media. The party has its own strategy, and I'm sure they're executing it to the best of their abilities. I think, from what I've been hearing from colleagues and friends, and Smita Prakash may have alluded to that a little bit, there seems to be something shifting on the ground. I guess time will tell what happens with
RP saying, you're from Delhi, what is shifting on the ground? We'll all be here on the 8th, I'm sure.
what is shifting on ground is what Smita Prakash is not able to sense is that there is a Jhuggi Jhopdi vote and the cluster vote is voting for BJP this time, is a swing in favor of BJP, because they are also fed of the false promises made by Mr. Kejriwal, whether it was the Mohalla clinic where you don't get medicines and fake tests have been conducted, whether it was free water, which never happens. Every poor man has to buy a bottle of water. So that is also shifting in favor of BJP.
Okay, we'll see. Like I said, we'll all be here on the 8th. We'll know if there's any shift on the ground or was that a mirage. Thank you very much, Salman Soz, RP Singh and Smita Prakash for joining us. Let's move on to the other big story. Just weeks after Uttarakhand implemented the Uniform Civil Code, now another BJP-ruled state is following suit. Gujarat and the state government there has announced that they're forming a committee to explore the mechanism regarding implementation of a Uniform Civil Code. The Chief Minister has set up a 5-member panel, which is interestingly chaired by the same retired Supreme Court judge, Ranjana Desai, who also headed the committee that looked into the Uttarakhand matter. This committee will submit its report in 45 days' time, while the opposition has said that the decision was aimed at diverting attention from more pressing issues ahead of the upcoming local body polls. The government claims the rights of the state's tribal communities would be protected if the UCC is implemented. In fact, that is one of the things, the remits that's been given to this committee to implement or come up with a uniform code, at the same time protect vulnerable groups. Now, the UCC is one of the BJP's core promises. It's been part of every BJP manifesto since 1980. It provides for a single civil law for all religious communities in matters like marriage, divorce, inheritance, adoption. The UCC was recently brought into force in Uttarakhand. It's a bulky enactment, has about 390-odd sections, 7 schedules and multiple forms. It is seen as a template by many other states, particularly the states that are BJP-ruled. Assam, for example, is mulling a similar bill to bring in a uniform civil code. Assam took a step in that direction by repealing the Muslim Marriage Act in August of 2024. Haryana, too, is studying how a uniform code can be implemented in the state. The same is the case for Madhya Pradesh and Uttar Pradesh, both of whom are trying to build consensus on the idea of a uniform civil law. Gujarat, of course, is now assessing the implications with the formation of this panel, which is headed by retired Supreme Court Judge Justice Ranjana Desai. Up until 2025, Goa was the only state in the country which had a uniform code in effect. The Portuguese Civil Code was introduced in Goa in the 19th century, and after Goa became a union territory of India in 1961, it was allowed to continue using the Portuguese Civil Code.
સુપ્રીમ કોર્ટના નિવૃત્ત ન્યાયાધીશ શ્રીમતી રંજના દેસાઈની અધ્યક્ષતામાં એક કમિટીની રચના કરવાનો મહત્વપૂર્ણ નિર્ણય કર્યો છે. આ કમિટી તમામ પાસાઓનો સુગ્રથિત અભ્યાસ કરીને પોતાનો રિપોર્ટ 45 દિવસમાં રાજ્ય સરકારને આપશે અને રિપોર્ટના આધારે રાજ્ય સરકાર योग्य निर्णय करसे.
भारतीय जनता पार्टी के पास और कुछ है ही नहीं, तो वो पूरे देश को इन्हीं चीजों को उलझा के रखना चाहते हैं. उनका एक ही एजेंडा है कि कैसे देश के अंदर विभाजन हो, धर्म के आधार पर, जाति के आधार पर, वो उस काम में लगे हुए हैं.
बीजेपी ये संविधान को और उनकी जो गरिमा है संविधान की, उसको क्यों कूड़े में डालकर फेंक देना चाहती है? अच्छा, देश का इससे भला क्या होने वाला है? बीजेपी उन मुद्दों को छेड़ती है, उन मुद्दों को उठाती है जिससे देश के विकास का, डेवलपमेंट का, बेरोजगारी का, युवाओं के लिए कोई दिशा नहीं है.
All right, let's shift focus now. US President Donald Trump's campaign of sending back illegal aliens is coming home to roost. The Trump administration has sought the U.S. military's help to assist the immigration agenda by sending additional troops to the southern border, U.S.-Mexico border. They're also using military aircraft to deport migrants and opening military bases to house them. Deportation flights have carried migrants who have been deemed as illegal to Guatemala, to Peru and Honduras. And now the first such flight, a C-17 military helicopter, is in the air right now, headed towards Amritsar. It's expected to land in Amritsar in the wee hours of tomorrow morning. India is the farthest destination that these US military aircraft will be flying with supposed illegal aliens. This deportation is the first since the return of Donald Trump to the White House. It also comes a few days before Prime Minister Modi visits the United States for the first visit to the White House under Trump 2.0. So a C-17 military transport aircraft carrying over 200 quote-unquote illegal Indian immigrants departed from San Antonio in Texas for Amritsar in Punjab. Upon landing, they will be debriefed first, as the agencies believe it's important to know the antecedents of the people who had gone to America illegally. This flight with illegal immigrants will not be landing in Delhi. This is part of a strategy, the bilateral meeting between Dr. Jaishankar and Marco Rubio, which happened a couple of weeks ago. It set the stage for the repatriation of as many as 18,000 illegal Indian immigrants. The figure could be much higher than that, though it's unclear how many exactly are there illegal Indian immigrants in the US. As per data from the American government, Indians accounted for 3% of all illegal border crossings in 2024, and over 1,000 were deported from the United States just in the last year. The External Affairs Minister had said that New Delhi will verify the documents of all of these people, and if they found to be Indian citizens, then they will be happily accepted.
We had a discussion on a range of issues, and one of the issues which came up was actually mobility of people. Now, we have a position on mobility which is a principal position, applies to all countries. As a government, we obviously are very much supportive of legal mobility because we do believe in a global workplace. We want Indian talent and Indian skills to have the maximum opportunity at a global level with every country, and the US is no exception. We have always taken the view that if there are any of our citizens who are not here legally, if we are sure that they are our citizens, we have always been open to their legitimate return to India. I've seen some numbers. I caution you about them because for us a number is operative when we can actually validate the fact that the individual concerned is of Indian origin. And the fact that at our end we have to verify that they are indeed Indians because naturally there are sensitivities involved there as well.
Now, there are no definitive figures on how many illegal Indian immigrants are there in the US, but there is a Pew Research Center study in 2022 which is based on the US Census Bureau data. There are approximately 725,000 illegal Indian immigrants currently in the US. India is the third largest source of unauthorized immigrants in the country. The first happens to be Mexico with more than 4 million, and then second is El Salvador. In total, there are estimated to be something like 11 million illegal immigrants in the United States. So the illegal immigrants find themselves in various stages of the legal process. First, of course, happens to be detention. Now, some individuals who are currently held in temporary detention centers, which is under the jurisdiction of the Department of Immigration and Customs Enforcement, or ICE, under the new border czar Tom Homan. Then there is the second stage, which is the final removal orders, which are issued by these tribunals or temporary courts. A significant portion of these individuals, in fact, more than 17,000 of them, are under these final removal orders, meaning that they have been ordered to leave the United States by these temporary courts of law, but they've not been deported yet. So the number of people who are being brought back, including the one in the C-17 military transport aircraft right now en route to Amritsar, are part of those who are part of this final leaving order. And then the remaining 2,500 odd are individuals who are in detention and who are yet to face their trial or to be given a final deportation order by a court of law. All right, so that C-17 U.S. military transport aircraft expected to land in Amritsar in the next few hours, and this is coming just a week before the Prime Minister heads out to the White House. Let's go across to strategic affairs expert, Professor Brahma Chalani, who's now joining us. Professor, let me start with the first part of the discussion on this. So the U.S. says there are close to 18,000 illegal Indian immigrants who it wants to repatriate back to India. The first flight of about 200 is on its way to Amritsar. Why does one get the feeling that India is sort of going out of its way just to please Mr. Trump before the visit to the White House next week?
Trump clearly means business. The fact that he has invited Modi to visit the White House next week while deporting the first batch of illegal Indian migrants by military aircraft sends a no-nonsense message. He wants to advance his core agenda, and illegal migration is at the center of his agenda. So he is going to demand that India accept these deportees, and obviously India has agreed to accept them. That's the reason why this military aircraft is going to land in Amritsar. But the only good news for India is that it's the US that is paying for these deportations by sending a military aircraft. Each deportee will cost the US more than $4,000. It's better that they pay for the flights rather than India sending chartering aircraft to bring back these illegal migrants.
But Professor, one thing is, okay, 200, 500, even 18,000, even though the External Affairs Minister, when he was at the White House, when he went to the US for the inauguration of Trump, he said, I would be careful about that figure. But the Pew Research Center estimates there are more than 700,000 illegal Indian immigrants in the US. If the US were to decide to send all of them back, that would be a huge cost on the Indian government, on the Indian state.
You're right, Zakka. What Trump wants is to show to his constituency at home that he's able to deliver on his core promises. So if he can deport, let's say, a few thousand to Latin America, a couple of thousand to India, a few thousand to China, that would tell his constituency that he's a man who sticks to his word. I don't think we expect him to deport 18,000 or whatever the figure is, the illegally settled Indians in the US.
All right, let's shift focus to the meat of what is going to be the visit, and that, of course, is going to center around defense deals, defense trade. Prime Minister Modi is all set to pay that visit. It's a two-day visit, 13th and 14th of February, which is going to be next week. There's going to be wide-ranging talks with President Donald Trump. In fact, in the phone call that they had in January, Mr. Trump made it very clear he expects two priority areas from India. Number one, that India should buy more American weapons, and number two, for what he called a fairer trading partnership. After finishing his two-day visit to Paris for the Global AI Summit, which is going to be early part of next week, Prime Minister Modi will then head straight to Washington, D.C., and he will meet with Donald Trump at the White House on the 13th of February. It will be the first such meeting between the two leaders since Donald Trump returned to office 2 weeks ago. The two leaders held a phone call last month, after which, like I said, the US President had said that Prime Minister Modi would probably visit the White House soon, as early as February, and that is now coming to pass. He will be one of the first few foreign leaders to visit Washington, D.C. for one-on-one talks, barely a couple of weeks after Trump took office for a second term. But like I said, the big focus is going to be on the defense partnership. What are the big defense deals that could likely get announced? What is on India's defense shopping list? Here's a deep dive. The possible meeting between Trump and Modi in the White House brings renewed focus on US-India ties, particularly in the realm of defense cooperation. With Trump's vocal support for strengthening the Quad and his insistence that India purchase more American-made defense equipment, the stage is set for an exciting White House visit as early as mid-February. But let's critically examine the potential defense deals, the technological challenges there are, including the GE jet engine en passe, and of course the broader Indo-Pacific strategy to counter the rising Chinese threat. Under Trump's first term, the US administration frequently touted defense partnerships and the benefits of US technology. Trump is now expected to push even harder for India to increase its purchases of American defense equipment. One likely area of expansion is in advanced fighter jet technology. While India has long sought to modernize its air force, including importing the fifth-generation Rafale jets from France, the question does arise, can India potentially acquire a sixth-generation fighter jet from the United States? At present, America is in the early stages of developing a sixth-generation fighter. These platforms are envisioned to feature ultra-stealth capabilities, advanced sensor fusions, hypersonic speeds, and artificial intelligence-driven systems. However, right now, no sixth-generation fighter is available yet, either for production or for export. In the near term, Trump is likely to press India to consider expanding its fleet from the F-35 stealth fighters, which is already a mainstay of US weapons exports. India could also look at joint development programs that incorporate next-generation technologies over the coming few decades. The Trump administration's push for a stronger defense industrial base could result in more collaborative ventures. Beyond fighter jets, some potential new defense deals could include advanced missile systems, enhanced air-to-air and surface-to-air missiles, which improve the Indian Air Forces and the Army's capabilities against modern-day aerial threats. There's also naval technologies, next-generation destroyers, frigates, and littoral combat vehicles that incorporate advanced radar and weapon systems for maritime security. Remember, when the Prime Minister went for the state visit in June of 2023, the Navy had announced that they were procuring the MQ-9B Predator drones, some of which will be delivered soon in 2025 and 2026. Also, unmanned systems, aerial and maritime drones for surveillance, reconnaissance, and combat, which are now increasingly vital, as is being seen in the Russia-Ukraine war. Modern-day warfare is being defined by which country has better drone technology. And then, of course, there is cyberspace and aerospace capabilities, joint research and development in cybersecurity and space-based assets, which are critical for integrated defense systems in the 21st century. Added to this, the recent announcement from China about its indigenous sixth-generation fighter jet has added urgency to these discussions between India and America. China unveiling its conceptual sixth-generation fighter jet, a platform reportedly which has breakthrough stealth technology, hypersonic propulsion, and integrated sensor networks, has set off alarms in strategic circles. China, back in December of 2024, unveiled what it called the White Emperor, or the Bai-D, which is a sixth-generation fighter. It is a strategic inflection point, particularly in the ongoing strategic competition between India and China. The very idea of China fielding such advanced technology represents a strategic threat, not just for India, but also for the United States. India's geographical proximity to China and the long-standing border dispute with Beijing, all of this means that any significant leap in Chinese air power could substantially tilt the regional military balance. For India, this underscores the need to accelerate its own modernization program and to secure advanced technology from the United States. Even if a sixth-generation fighter is not immediately available, the prospect of a Chinese leap in air technology acts as a catalyst both for India and for the United States to deepen their defense procurement and joint development of military technology. One area of considerable concern in this regard for India's defense modernization is the delay in the GE jet engine deal with HAL, which was announced in 2023 when Prime Minister Modi had a state visit to the United States. The agreement was intended to enable Indian partners like Hindustan Aeronautics Limited to co-develop and produce advanced jet engines, the 414 GE jet engines, that would power the indigenous fighter plane, the Tejas. However, GE's reluctance to share crucial technology with its Indian partner has pushed back the timelines quite significantly. The core issue is that of intellectual property. GE has been cautious about transferring sensitive engine technology, and that, of course, underpins its own competitive edge in the global aerospace market. This reticence has led to delays in integrating the GE HAL engine into the Tejas aircraft. This would be the Mark II engine for the Tejas Mark II. For the Indian Air Force, the induction of the Tejas Mark II with its modern and reliable engines is absolutely critical. The evolving security environment in the Indo-Pacific is also a challenge and an opportunity for US-India cooperation. With China aggressively expanding its military capabilities and projecting power in the South China Sea and the East China Sea, both US and India need to recalibrate. To counter China's advances, the US and India can deepen joint military exercises. Right now, there are the Quad exercises, the Malabar exercises as they're called, which involves India, Japan, and the United States, and also Australia. They could also consider intelligence sharing, technology transfer. A more robust defense partnership would help both Washington and Delhi with their core strengths and also jointly counter a hegemonic China. The Quad, or the Quadrilateral Security Dialogue, which comprises the US, India, Japan, and Australia, is emerging as a critical forum for shaping regional security dynamics. In Trump's first term, there was significant support for the Quad as a counterbalance to China. In fact, Quad got elevated to the foreign minister's level when Trump was in office in his first term. Subsequently, his successor Joe Biden elevated the Quad meeting to a heads of government level with a yearly Quad summit. India will be hosting the Quad summit this year, later on, which Trump will be attending in person. Trump is in fact expected to reinforce the Quad framework even more. Trump's approach has always been characterized by an America First mentality, yet in his first term, there was vigorous support for multilateral frameworks, particularly the Quad. In his second term, Trump is expected to double down on the Quad. urging India to take a leading role in the Indo-Pacific. For India, the stakes are very high. The need to modernize its armed forces is urgent. It's driven by a rapidly changing security environment in the Indo-Pacific. And by deepening its defense ties with the US, India can gain access to cutting-edge technology, benefit from joint development programs, and enhance its strategic autonomy. However, this partnership must also navigate sensitive issues like technology transfer and indigenous military capability. Clearly, the two priority areas, as Trump has identified after his phone call with Prime Minister Modi last week, was one, he expects India to buy more defense equipment from the United States, and two, what he calls a fairer trade relationship. I want to deal with the defense part. Do you expect some big-ticket defense purchases when the Prime Minister visits the White House next week?
Trump has always meant business. If you look at his first term, he persuaded India to ramp up imports of American oil and petroleum products. So even though the Indian government didn't reveal that it had actually yielded to US pressure, American government figures showed that from the year 2019, for 4 years in a row, India's imports of American oil and petroleum products suddenly spiked until the Russian invasion of Ukraine opened up cheaper oil for India. So this time, Trump is again asking India to ramp up purchases of American oil and petroleum products while also buying more American weapon systems. He wants to close all of America's bilateral trade deficits. And the number of countries that actually run large trade surpluses with the US, which they seek to offset partly or wholly. They run these large trade surpluses with the US but large trade deficits with China. And those large trade deficits, they offset wholly or partly through these trade surpluses with the US, and India is one of them. Mm-hmm. India has a $36 billion trade surplus with the US and about an $86 billion deficit with China. And I think the task for India, and this is going to be quite a huge economic challenge for India, as to how it can reduce its trade surplus with the US. And this might actually entail India increasing tariffs on imports from China, because that's the only option. India has been allowing China to flood its market with cheap goods, with goods of oil, with goods that actually can be produced in India. And maybe the Trump administration pressure could finally make India try to balance its trade relationship with China.
But I want to come back to, and this is my final question, on the defense relationship. Trump sees it as a transactional buyer-seller relationship. India, on the other hand, and we've seen this in the GE-HAL jet engine deal, we're seeing that in some of the other deals as well, where India is prioritizing A, technology transfer, and B, also joint development, a joint collaboration to make in India some parts of these weapon systems. Do you think India will be able to convince Trump to do some of that?
Zakka, diplomacy intrinsically is in part transactional. That is the reason why, under Joe Biden, despite the new strains in US-India relations, India a few months ago unveiled this $3.5 billion drone deal. Now, the relationship with the US is the most important relationship for India. It is critical to India's economic and military security, to its access to technology and capital, and to its international image. India will buy more American weapon systems, and it has bought billions of dollars worth of American weapon systems in the last decade alone. But the Americans are reluctant to transfer technology, and this is the reason why major increases in American sales of military equipment of India are going to not be that smooth, because India wants technology transfer, and this is critical to India's Make in India initiative.
All right, Professor Brahmachalani, we'll leave it at that. Thank you very much for joining us. It's going to be a fascinating trip by Prime Minister Modi to the White House, the first under Trump 2.0, and lots to talk about. Thank you very much for joining us. During this past week, Israel and Hamas conducted a tense hostage and prisoner swap. The exchange turned chaotic as crowds of Palestinians surged to glimpse Israeli captives. Hamas freed 8 hostages, including 3 Israelis and 5 Thai workers. The event angered Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, who briefly halted the release of Palestinian prisoners. The deal was part of a 42-day ceasefire brokered by Qatar, Egypt, and the United States. Hamas handed over 3 Israeli hostages: Agam Berger, 20 years old, an Israeli soldier; Arbel Yehud, 29 years old; and Gady Moses, who's almost 80. 5 Thai agricultural workers were also freed. But crowds in Khan Yunis surrounded the hostages during the transfer, prompting Netanyahu to condemn Hamas for its brutality. In that southern city of Gaza, armed militants struggled to control the crowds who had gathered in thousands and who were chanting right outside the home of slain Hamas leader Yahya Sinwar. Photographs showed Arbel Yehud, one of the last female hostages in Gaza, escorted by gunmen through throngs of crowds. Gady Moses navigated tight crowds before reaching the Red Cross officials. Netanyahu called the scenes shocking and demanded safer transfer for future exchanges. Hamas, battered by months of Israeli military operations, gains precisely what it needs from this ceasefire, which is time. Hamas will use this time to exploit and to regroup its fighters, reposition its rockets, and rebuild tunnels. Meanwhile, Israel surrenders its momentum in this 15-month-long war. Every day the IDF pauses its campaign, it allows Hamas to rearm and entrench its control over Gaza. For Hamas, the hostage swap is not an act of goodwill or temporary pause. It is an act of currency. Each released Israeli hostage buys international legitimacy. It bolsters Hamas's narrative of being the sole keepers of Gaza. By contrast, Israel's release of Palestinian prisoners, many of whom were convicted for terrorism, rewards violence. It also risks future attacks. Releasing as many as 1,500 prisoners, including some of them masterminds of suicide bombings, is not just a security gamble. Many in Israel are calling it a moral capitulation. The release of these prisoners also signals to the Palestinians and to the international community at large that terrorism pays. Benjamin Netanyahu has been clinging on to power amid plummeting approval ratings and corruption trials. He's clearly prioritized his own short-term political survival over Israel's long-term security. The ceasefire allows him to placate hostage families and their very vocal supporters who've been at his case for the last almost year and a half. But questions are now being asked about the cost of this. By halting military operations before Hamas is entirely dismantled, which was one of the express objectives that was given by Netanyahu before he launched this campaign, that leaves Hamas very much intact to carry out a repeat of the October 2023 massacre. While freeing hostages is the moral imperative here, negotiating with Hamas sets a dangerous precedent. It incentivizes future kidnappings. It undermines Israel's long-standing policy of no concessions and no dialogue with the terrorists. This particular swap this past week marked the 3rd exchange under this truce. Hamas has pledged free 33 hostages in exchange for 1,500 Palestinian prisoners. Israel released over 110 prisoners this past week. In the first tranche, 32 of them were serving life sentences. Palestinians in Ramallah awaited updates outside a government center. The 2023 Hamas attack killed over 1,200 Israelis and abducted 250. Israel's retaliatory strikes in Gaza have caused more than 45,000 deaths as per local health officials, and it has displaced millions. Fighting paused for the truce with another swap that was expected over the weekend. Hamas announced the names of 3 more hostages, including an American citizen whom it said it would release the weekend as part of the ceasefire deal. Those 3 hostages have been named as well as Yarden Baibas, 35 years old, Ofer Calderon, 54 years old, and Keith Siegel, 65, who's an American Israeli. Israel is slated to release, in exchange for these 90 Palestinian prisoners. Netanyahu paused the prisoner releases over safety concerns, but it resumed after mediators assured him of future safeguards. Hamas claimed that the crowds that had gathered in Khan Yunis symbolized Palestinian resilience. Prime Minister Netanyahu is all set to meet President Donald Trump of the US at the White House this week. The talks will focus on extending the Gaza ceasefire. Netanyahu becomes the first foreign leader invited during Trump's second term. That's a signal of how much Trump is prioritizing the US-Israel relationship. It also underscores Trump's focus on ending the Gaza war first over other conflicts like the one in Ukraine. The ceasefire's first phase began just a day before Trump's inauguration, giving his administration early momentum as well as some bragging rights. Trump had earlier warned Hamas to release the hostages before his swearing in, vowing that there would be hell to pay if the demands were not met. Hamas has perfected the art of weaponizing Gaza. By embedding fighters in hospitals and schools and residential areas, Hamas ensures maximum Palestinian casualties, and that is a tactic designed to turn global opinion against Israel. The ceasefire's humanitarian aid provisions will only deepen this. With Hamas still in power, the ceasefire does nothing to address Gaza's governance vacuum. So, once this ceasefire is over, Israel will soon face a stark choice. One, either to reoccupy Gaza, which is both a political and a military disaster, or simply allow Hamas to continue governing Gaza. Both options are catastrophic. The ceasefire's next phase hinges on further talks. Hostage families have urged officials to continue negotiations until all the captives are returned. The chaotic exchange that we saw this past week highlighted tensions in this rather tenuous ceasefire. While some hostages have been reunited with their families, many of them are still captive. The truce offers temporary respite, but lasting peace is very, very uncertain. This ceasefire is not peace. It is simply an intermission. Hamas survives to fight another day, Israel's security has been eroded, and the international community pats itself on the back for delaying the inevitable. When the truce collapses, as it will, the war will resume with greater ferocity. And when it does, Hamas will be stronger and savvier. It would have learned how to manipulate global opinion. Israel, on the other hand, would be politically fractured and morally exhausted. And it's going to face a very stark choice. And that is this. The hard truth is that there can be no lasting peace with Hamas. There are only two choices. Either Israel eliminates the group, or Hamas simply outlasts Israel. This ceasefire chooses the latter.
After Arvind Kejriwal questioned the Election Commission of India, now the Election Commission has hit back as it is posted on Twitter, on social media platform X, and this is what the post is reading. I'm quoting from it. The three-member commission collectively noted repeated deliberate pressure tactics to malign ECI in Delhi elections as if it is a single-member body and decided to have constitutional restraint, observing such outbursts with sagacity, stoically, and not to be swayed by such insinuations. This is the latest reaction by the Election Commission of India. This is over charges by Arvind Kejriwal claiming that the workings of the ECI need to be looked upon as they are politically driven. Now, my colleague Arunima is with us on the broadcast. Arunima, ECI is completely putting out its statement and saying that these are insinuations and the Election Commission doesn't want to be swayed by it or respond to it, and yet this particular tweet.
Yes, so they want to put it out on record that all the allegations that have been made by the political parties, the Election Commission is not ignoring it. They are well aware of the kind of political insinuation that is being made, but because of the constitutional position that the Election Commission of India has, they are refraining from getting into a tutu-meme on political divide between the ruling side and the opposition. What is really triggering this outburst? If you recall, from this morning onwards, Atishi, who's the Chief Minister of Delhi, she's put out tweets against the Election Commission of India, questioning why there is an FIR against her. There has been FIR and counter FIRs between Atishi and Mr. Bidhuri, who's contesting from Kalkaji. His nephew has also been accused of violating the Representation of People's Act. So there is an FIR, counter FIR between these two candidates of Kalkaji. Earlier, when the Election Commission's team, the Swift Action team, had reached Kapurthala House where Bhagwant Mann was residing, there were again tweets put out by Bhagwant Mann saying, "Why is the ECI doing this to us?" So repeated allegations by the Aam Aadmi Party-led opposition here, the India opposition, the ruling side here in Delhi, saying that the Election Commission is acting in a biased manner. So why this tweet has been put out is for ECI, which cannot defend itself, but at the same time say that what you're doing is eroding the basis that Election Commission has as far as credibility is concerned. Even in his press conference, CEC Rajiv Kumar had made this a point when he addressed the press, saying you are essentially discouraging the young voter by vitiating this entire democratic process atmosphere.
Right, Arunima, thank you so much for that. In fact, do stay on with us. We also have our colleague Pallavi on the broadcast now. Pallavi, after the outbursts that have come by way of other members of the opposition like Rahul Gandhi in the parliament yesterday, and what is now recently been put out in the form of a tweet by both the Delhi Chief Minister Atishi and Arvind Kejriwal, is it fast turning out to be how they are claiming that AC has become fair game and EC is now chosen to respond to that?
Yeah, I think it's one thing which marks most elections after elections. But if you look at the Delhi elections alone, right from day one, there have been lots of allegations which have been made on the working of the EC, whether it is in terms of bogus voters or the voters list being fudged and being subservient to the BJP or to a central government. And then every day on a daily basis, we are seeing many allegations which have been made on the Election Commission of using its offices to target its political opponents of the BJP, whether it's AAP and to a certain extent the Congress. In fact, as late as yesterday, you saw Rahul Gandhi talk about the Election Commission and it's working about fudging voters as far as Maharashtra is concerned. I think EC on the eve of voting taking place in the national capital wants to set the record straight that it's not a single man body. It is something which is very much constitutional, follows the rules of the game, and this kind of constant targeting and questioning of the Election Commission is absolutely unfair. It wants to set the record straight also and also put these kind of concerns at rest in the mind of the voters that it's a level playing field and no unsubstantiated charges should be accepted.
Right, Pallavi and Arunima, thank you so much for that. In fact, staying with our focus on Delhi as it goes to polls tomorrow. Now, Aam Aadmi Party National Convener Arvind Kejriwal has blamed the EVMs and he's now announced that Aam Aadmi Party has developed a website to ensure the integrity of electronic voting machines ahead of the upcoming Delhi elections. According to Arvind Kejriwal, this particular website is designed to track and monitor voting machines to prevent any tampering or discrepancies in the election process. He's also urged Delhi voters to use the platform to report any suspicious activity that's pertaining to EVMs, promising transparency and accountability. Meanwhile, the BJP has hit back at Arvind Kejriwal and accused him of doing drama before elections.
मैं दिल्ली की जनता को कहना चाहता हूं कि मेरे को सूत्रों से पता चला है कि मशीनों से ये 10% वोट की गड़बड़ कर सकते हैं। देना इतना जम के वोट देना, एक एक झाड़ू का वोट डालने के लिए निकलना चाहिए कि अगर हमारी 15% की लीड हो गई तो 5% से जीत जाएंगे, 10% के ऊपर की लीड दे देना हर जगह। इतना जम के वोट डालना कि इनकी मशीनों के ऊपर हम जीत जाएं। एहतियात के तौर पे हमने एक वेबसाइट बनाई है। महाराष्ट्र और हरियाणा के चुनावों से जो सीख मिली उससे हमने ये तय किया है कि 5 तारीख की रात को इस वेबसाइट के ऊपर हर पोलिंग बूथ की ये 6 जानकारी हम उस वेबसाइट पे डाल देंगे ताकि मशीनों से छेड़छाड़ ना की जा सके।
अरविंद केजरीवाल नौटंकी मास्टर हैं, लगातार नौटंकी करते हैं और ये बात हम 1 महीने से कह रहे थे कि जैसे जैसे चुनाव आएगा अरविंद केजरीवाल की नौटंकी चालू रहेगी। खुद अपने कार्यकर्ताओं को उकसाना, खुद अपने कार्यकर्ताओं को दिखाना और पहले से वीडियो की टीम तैयार करना, ये पुराने हथकंडे जो अरविंद केजरीवाल हर चुनाव में आजमाते हैं। मैं अरविंद को एक सुझाव देता हूं, अगर उनको इतना खतरा लग रहा है तो चुनाव आयोग से बात करें। आप तो रोज चिट्ठी लिख रहे हैं उनको, दिल्ली पुलिस से बात करें और अपने लिए एक सेफ होम तैयार करें ताकि किसी भी तरह की नौटंकी आपकी ना हो पाए। तो मेरा सुझाव है अरविंद माने या न माने उनकी मर्जी है।
After Arvind Kejriwal questioned the Election Commission of India, now the Election Commission has hit back as it is posted on Twitter, on social media platform X, and this is the what.
Viewers, Prime Minister Modi didn't need to be reminded of the context. On the eve of the Delhi election and mindful of the poll code put in place by the Election Commission, the Prime Minister delivered a 90-minute masterclass, viewers, in taking out his opponents using only the power of innuendo and the force of facts. Remember, because of the poll code, he could not mention, for example, Arvind Kejriwal by name. But viewers, he laced his statements with enough references, indirect ones, with great felicity to expose the AAP chief. So much so that the AAP chief has not been able to counter the Prime Minister because the Prime Minister did not name him. The Prime Minister, viewers,